React Native developers. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to morph shapes, and we're going to use this fun example from the Kuberto agency. This is based on an open source example, which is written in SwiftUI. And from the open source SwiftUI code, I was able to extract the parameters of the shapes. So each shape is represented as a concatenation of Bezier curves. As you've seen in the previous lesson, Bezier curves are simply 4 parameters, right? The start point, control point 1, control point 2, destination point. So these are just a set of numerical values that we can use for interpolation. So if each path has the same number of Bezier curves, there is the same number of points total. And so we can easily interpolate from these values, giving this nice morphing effect. And as you've seen also at the end of the last lesson, in Redash, we offer internal representation of these Bezier curves coordinate. So we can easily do things like interpolation. So we're going to build this example in 2 steps. First, we're going to build the slider. So we have a gesture that can be translated. So we have a cursor, which can be translated from 0 to the width of the slider. And that's going to drive an animation value, which is going to go from 0 to 1. And so once we have this animation value, this progress value that goes from 0 to 1, we can use it to interpolate the background color first, as well as the paths. And thankfully, the parameters of each path are given to us from the open source library. So here I'm on the eye view, and I have the angry path, which is a concatenation of 5 cubic Bezier curves, and same for the normal path and good path. And this is the paths we are going to interpolate to. So let's jump into VS Code. Here we have the progress value, which is going to become an animation value, and this is going to be driven by the gesture. So the gesture is the slider component, which is the component you see here at the bottom. We have the eye, and here, so again, I copy-pasted the path from the open source library and used create path and add curve from Redash. So we have an internal representation we can use for interpolation, and same for the mouth. Now let's deal with the slider. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a translate X value that the slider is going to modify with the pan gesture handler. And from the slider value, we're going to interpolate the progress value. So let me create an animation value called translate X. And now progress is derived from translate X. So we're going to use derived value. Progress is translate X divided by the width of the slider. If the slider is at 0, progress is at 0. If the slider is at slider as the width of the if translate X is at the width of the slider, progress is going to be 1. So translate X dot value divided by slider width. And now we're going to wrap the slider component into a pan gesture handler, which is going to drive the translate X value. So if I go in slider, first we pass translate X as a property. So I'm just going to create slider props quickly. So translate X is an animated shared value. And so this is the part we want to animate. So this is the cursor that is moving. So this becomes an animated view, and we can wrap it into a pan gesture handler. And for the pan gesture handler, this is now becoming very repetitive. We just need to keep X as an offset value, and when the gesture starts and when the gesture is active, we update translate X accordingly. So on gesture event is use animated gesture handler. Let me import it. So first parameter, oops, let me just. So first parameter is this one, the pan gesture handler event. And the second one is the context. So the context, again, is the state between gesture events. And here we want to store the X value. So that's our offset. Let me import this one. So Here it's always the same drill. When the gesture starts, we keep translate x in the offset. So context.x equals translate x.value. And when the gesture is active, so here we use translation x, we get the context, and we have translate x equals translation x plus context.x. Now, to see if this works, we need to translate this cursor. So I'm going to create an animated style for it. So style equals use animated style, transform, translate x equals translate x.value. So let's see if this moves the cursor along. It does. And now let's see if this drives the progress animation value properly. And so we can do this quickly, maybe by animating the background color before interpolating the shapes, just to see if it works. So this one becomes an animated view, and I'm going to create an animated style for the container. So container, use animated style, and just import this one. So background color, I can remove it here from the container style and do background color and use interpolate color from reanimated. We used to have these functions from redash, but actually now reanimated provides the same functionality, and I would say even better. So interpolate color from 0, 0, 5 is normal and 1 is good, and 0 is angry. So we go to bad, normal, good. Let me import it. So we want it from reanimated. So the color interpolates nicely, indicating that the progress animation value works nicely. And now we can use it to interpolate the path. So let's start with the mouth. So here progress becomes an animation value. Path becomes an animated path. So let me just put it here. Up. And so the D property I'm going to remove, and I'm going to create animated props. And we're going to use animated props. So now we animate the D property, and we're going to use interpolate path from redash. The animation value is progress. So progress.value, we go from 0 angry, 0, 5 normal, 1 good. And then the second parameter, here we can do the path, and then redash does everything else for us. So it will look at interpolating every values and the serialization as an SVG path. So angry path, which are again the path I copy pasted from the Swift UI code. So angry path, normal path, good path. And so let's see. So you see the mouth animates nicely. So that's fun. Now let's do the eyes using the same principle. So here progress becomes an animated value. We need also animated path. And it's here. So D we remove. We use animated props instead. So we animate on the D property using interpolate path. So it's really the same story, progress.value, which I should get here. Remove this here, import use animated props, So we go 0, 0, 5, 1, and we have angry path, normal path, good path. Yeah, let's have a look. So you see now it animates nicely. And you see, I forgot to clamp the slider. We can fix this one easily by clamping on active from 0 to slider with. So let's have a look. So you see now I cannot go outside the slider. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope that this lesson is inspiring you to build incredible user interactions in your app using shape morphing. We can represent heterogeneous shapes into a non-homogeneous representation using cubic Bezier curves and allowing to easily animate and smoothly animate from one shape to the other, as in the example that we've built. So I feel like this can open the door to a lot of interesting user interactions.